Over the years, Teamfight Tactics has established itself as the best auto battler out there, with no other game coming remotely close to its success, and this will not change for a long time to come. You can easily see this by the popularity of the game on content platforms, the sheer number and drive for esports events, and with the community continuing to grow set after set. But why does TFT have no competitors? How has TFT managed to completely take over the market as the best auto battler, and at this point, is there anything that can bring TFT's downfall? Let's find out. So how did TFT completely dominate the market? Well, following the wild success of Dota Auto Chess, Riot released Teamfight Tactics in June 2019. TFT was an instant hit, and within a few months of its release, it had already surpassed other popular auto battler games in terms of player count and engagement. There were 33 million players a month, TFT saw an explosive growth in China, and they even surpassed game modes like ARAM in terms of total game hours played. By the end of 2019, TFT's competitors like Dota Underlords saw its player base drop by up to 84%. And this was mainly due to how TFT just handled the auto battler genre better than Auto Chess and Underlords, as TFT has a low barrier to entry, as it was and still is completely free to play. TFT also has an amazing content cycle with refreshing new sets, and it uses well established and known champions from League of Legends. And since 2019, TFT has continued to dominate this genre, especially with mobile and the Chinese mobile version Fight for the Golden Spatula, growing the game and its reach even further. And of course, the numerous sets since have kept the gameplay fresh and engaging for players, which has also contributed to TFT content becoming more popular on platforms like YouTube and Twitch. And the competitive scene for TFT continues to grow year after year with regular tournaments like regionals, championships, and worlds. Here's a clip with Travis Gafford interviewing Riot's president of esports, John Needham, back in November 2022.
Are you guys planning on doing more than you guys are doing right now on the esport? Because right now it feels like it's more like community fun tournaments, right?
Yeah, totally. So one, TFT is the thing I do first every day of my life. And we love the game. It is the #1 strategy game in the world right now. I'll just say that. Okay. It is huge with Fight for the Golden Spatula in China and the PC version around the world and the League client. It is, you would be shocked at how many players that we have at TFT. When we look at TFT from an esports perspective, it doesn't have a lot of action like League or Valorant, right? Because it's a turn-based strategy game. So we're thinking about the esport in a different way. We're dreaming of ways that we can bring thousands of players into massive tournaments around TFT. And I've got a guy who's working with the TFT team right now to kind of bring that to life. So may not happen this next year, but in the next few years, we're going to have a really exciting competitive system built around TFT.
And indeed, Riot recently announced the LAN event that they're hosting in Las Vegas later this year. On the other hand, the most recent esports tournaments for both Underlords and Auto Chess was back in 2020. So while TFT's esports scene is growing and will completely transform in the next few years, the same just isn't true for its competitors. Those competitors just didn't keep up with TFT's content cycle. For example, Underlord's first season released late February 2020, whereas Teamfight Tactics was approaching its third set soon after. And with TFT transitioning to 3 sets a year with more game modes like Fortune's Favor and Soul Brawl, the content cycle continues to develop and expand, which means that the future growth of TFT may just be astronomical. And it's unlikely that new games are made in this genre that can compete with TFT, and I think Mortdog explains it best.
So why has no one else made a auto battler? I think the first thing is, you know how Riot hasn't set our player numbers or our revenue or anything like that? I think people really underestimate how successful TFT is. And a lot of other companies don't feel willing to gamble on something they perceive to be less successful than it actually is. So I think that's a big part of it. Right now, a lot of companies that want to do fast follow are going to do more copy pasting. So I think that's a big part of it. They just don't think it's successful. And then now at this point, they also have 3 years of catching up to do.
Whether it was intentional or not, Riot withholding the numbers on the success of TFT has partially deterred other companies from wanting to create their own auto battler. Some companies may look at the dwindling numbers of Underlords and auto chess and think this genre is not worth investing in, and they may look at TFT and think Riot just got lucky because they don't know the actual numbers. To keep an auto chess game fresh, you need a big roster of units to cycle through, unique mechanics that bring players back, and recognizable characters so players can enjoy and gravitate towards their favorites. And although it isn't necessary, I think story and lore can play a massive part as well, as it can establish depth to even the least impactful unit, and bring a lot of theme cohesion, which can make player investment into units much more meaningful. And Mortdog mentioned that companies that want to make a new auto battler have 3 years of catching up to do, but it's actually much more than that because TFT consists of league champions which have been created and developed over the course of almost 14 years. So TFT is already many years ahead, and it's almost impossible for anyone to catch up. Of course, just having a lack of competition isn't enough for a game to be successful. At its core, TFT is an amazing game. Despite being a part of the League franchise, TFT is a standalone game that has much more of a limited scope than League. There could be hundreds of League champions, and that wouldn't really matter because only around 58 of those will be units in each TFT set, and each of those units have a single ability derived from the respective League champion, and these units' base stats don't change with star level. This approach limits the complexity of TFT significantly, and it makes the game very accessible, especially to newer players, and it promotes depth from combinations, playstyles, and strategies. And this fixed complexity means the dev team can focus in and fine-tune individual units rather than constantly adding new champions or units with unique abilities, which can be very time-consuming and difficult to balance. This can allow the dev team to be split up between those who are fine-tuning and balancing, those improving the quality of the game, and those working on the next patches or even the next sets. This recipe is perfect for success because you can delegate very efficiently within the team, and you can avoid issues with large-scale and international companies like communication issues. Also, League players have a high chance of playing TFT since it's in the same client and it's one of the few games with characters they know, especially in set 9 when units have their base skins. So as League grows, so does TFT. And you can even make the argument that League quote-unquote dying is also good for TFT because those League players could easily jump into TFT with characters they already know. An example of this would be Necrit.
Personally, I can confirm that I haven't played League in quite some time, and TFT pretty much became my main Riot game.
And allegedly, TFT gets a more active player base than League does in NA.
Hey guys, I talked to a Riot employee off the record, and they told me that in North America, on many days, TFT has a bigger player base than League of Legends. I told you this, right?
TFT just does it better than the rest. It's incredibly accessible, there's frequent updates that shift the meta, there's great immersive themes, there's a growing esports scene, and a great dev team that is continuing to expand. TFT is already very refined, but it continues to grow with time and experience. So with all things considered, is there anything that can pose a serious hazard to TFT's success? In my opinion, the biggest threat to TFT currently and in the coming future is not posed by a new startup or an existing game. Rather, I think the biggest threat is the community. And there's two main reasons. If the community becomes toxic, then that is an extremely unwelcoming atmosphere, especially for new players, and this will greatly stagnate the growth of TFT. Toxicity can even drive the most dedicated players away. But toxicity can also drive the developers away, especially when it's directed towards them. And this is notable when the devs that have defined TFT as we know it are impacted. For example, can you imagine what TFT would look like if Mortdog decided to leave? Anyway, this toxicity would also stunt the growth of the dev team, because who would want to work in a toxic environment where each action and inaction is heavily scrutinized? Existing and new talent will just move to different projects, which are numerous at Riot. And the second reason is the community being or becoming fickle. A fickle community can be very challenging to handle due to the constant demand for new content and features, which can put a strain on the dev team. And if the community is not happy with the changes, they will definitely communicate that, which can lead to more toxicity and ultimately hurt the game's success. A fickle community is quick to criticize and complain about every aspect of the game, which can be discouraging for the development team and lead to burnout and a loss of passion. These fickle players are the first to jump ship at the first sight of a better prospect, but their complaints are the most vocal, and that can bring many players with them. Now, it's hard to judge how dedicated the community is, because the main community platform seems to be Reddit, which tends to be strife with complaints. But despite that, I honestly believe that the TFT community is incredibly dedicated. I mean, of course there are many complaint posts, but there are some true gems on this Reddit that really demonstrate how much people love this game. TFT is by far the most successful game of its kind, and it's beloved by many players, which is the biggest part of it all. Because it's so widely enjoyed and loved, even the most fickle of players can come back to TFT because there's just nothing else like it. So how has the community not become toxic, and what kept those fickle players interested? Well, there's one main factor that's contributed significantly to this and in developing the community, and that is the lead designer that many of you know, Mortdog.
Why don't game companies have someone like you who gives players answers and shares the point of view of the dev team? Really enjoy your streams, and thanks for the TFT work. Honest answer? Because typically companies, when they want somebody to work, they want them to, work on the game. This work is not work on the game. So no company's going to pay somebody to do what I do. And doing what I do is incredibly mentally taxing on top of it. And so doing that on top of everything else is, frankly, just insane. And there aren't a lot of people out there on the planet that are as silly and insane as I am. So finding people that are like, I'm going to work 40 plus hours and then also do this on top of things just seems insane. And it's also hard to confirm the actual value. Is it even worth me doing this? There's no measurable thing that has said TFT is better because Mort is doing this. So, what is this that you're doing? Streaming, answering questions, being there for players, talking to the community. That's what this is.
And I will stress that I think TFT is genuinely better because of what Mort does, as the community around TFT has been directly influenced by him. Having a community figure is great because players know they can voice their concerns and be heard. Of course, Mortdog isn't the sole reason that TFT is successful, but from the community's perspective, having a representative provides a lot of confidence and trust into the game. The transparency that he offers through his content and streams is insanely beneficial to players, as he reveals the motivations and thought processes that he and the team have for the game. The impact of developer transparency cannot be emphasized enough, and it's extremely scarce in many games. Postmortems were also notable, as he discusses the patch changes one by one, reflects on whether they were good or not, and isn't afraid to admit faults. This transparency is extremely appealing to fickle players, as they will come to understand how issues arose, and they will also know of upcoming changes that will fix those issues, and that keeps them interested in playing the game. This develops a sense of understanding between the dev team and players, which brews a healthy community, especially over the number of years Mortdog has done this. This foundation has created a great community, and this has prevented toxicity from becoming prevalent. Mortdog is incredibly dedicated. For example, even with his personal obligations to his family and job, he still made sure to attend the TFT Summit every day and be present as much as he could. And he's very responsive to the community. For example, back when there was a lot of criticism and disdain for Oxforce at the beginning of Glitched Out, Mortdog quickly communicated a change they were shipping to address this. Essentially, Mortdog helps keep the community healthy, thriving, and engaged. And I cannot understate how blessed this community is to have someone like Mortdog in it. And I think that should cover most of it. TFT has cemented itself as the king of auto battlers, and it doesn't look like that will change in the next few years. The only notable auto battler that has cropped up is Super Auto Pets, but this game isn't really comparable to TFT despite being in the same genre, as it's just so different to each other. Anyway, TFT will continue to receive updates and improvements, including new units, items, and the introduction of new gameplay mechanics, and it's still accessible as ever to both the casual and hardcore players, and still remains free to play. TFT is celebrating its 4th anniversary this year, and it has come really far since its inception, and there's no signs of it slowing down anytime soon. In fact, I think set 10 will be the best set ever, but that's for another video. I personally love this game and I've been playing it since beta, and I imagine I'll continue playing it in the next few years. But yeah, what do you guys think? How successful do you think TFT has been? Can the community actually bring the downfall of TFT? And how impactful do you think Mortdog has been on the TFT community? let me know in the comments and remember to subscribe. Anyway, check out these other videos if you want to see more from me, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.